Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another market analysis for the month of April. Now, this month has been crazy. I know I maybe say that about every month, but I think this one has been the most volatile month for really the entire RuneScape market in a long time. Now, prices were already at historic lows for quite a few different items, but on top of that, near the end of the month, we also got a fairly sudden and violent market crash, which we're going to talk about a bit today. As always, this is of course just my opinion. This is not meant to be investing advice. I could be wrong, and I'm actually usually going to be presenting multiple potential answers for most of the questions. So anyway, guys, hope you enjoy, and let's get started. Alright, so let's start off with what a lot of people have been talking about, especially over the last week, and that is the general crash of the OSRS market. Now, just recently, there's been an explosion in the amount of discussion regarding the economy, the amount of posts on Reddit, etc., Discord, personal messages. You know what, a lot of people are just talking about it right now. And well, you can kind of see why. Now, yes, there's been a general market decrease for a long time now, pretty much a year almost. However, the first thing I want to talk about here is this quick drop off that happened just at the end of April. While things were definitely dropping, we definitely hit a cliff here on, for example, this is the Dragon Hunter Lance going from 62 mil down to 58 mil overnight. Now we can see here that actually this trend happened on nearly all PVM items and also many non-PVM items as well. For example, here is the Armorial Crossbow. You can almost not even tell the difference between the graph. Here we have the Dragon Hunter Lance that, while again was dropping pretty much overnight, dropped from 82 mil down to 77 mil, probably even lower than that. We have the Sanguinesti staff going from 70 mil dropping down to 63 mil, again pretty well overnight. And those are just a couple examples. There are probably hundreds of other examples out there. Now, thanks once again to the RuneLite data, we can get really deep in here and see exactly what happened and why. So I think a great example here is actually the Armorial Crossbow. So sometime on the 20th, there was a massive sell-off, which actually dropped the crossbow by about 5 to 10%. So that will almost always indicate that there was a new update blog that came out, or some other out-of-game event. Well, wouldn't you know it, on the 20th, we got the first blog on equipment rebalancing in a while for the ranged meta. In the subsequent day, we got the first round of equipment rebalancing changes, making changes to the Dragon Warhammer, maces, the Twisted Bow, and a few other things. Now, while these updates actually only target a few different items, and you could argue that they didn't even change that much fundamentally, what was much more important than that is it served as a reminder that equipment rebalancing is happening and probably is going to happen in the near future. So that caused a pretty sudden and temporary sell-off of a lot of items, causing the general PVM market and the market as a whole to crash pretty quickly on the 20th and 21st. However, we can see that in a lot of circumstances it has rebounded back, so this was kind of artificial, just a panic sell-off, and there wasn't really a huge reason to have the market crash that much on the 20th and 21st. For example, the Armorial Crossbow went from 25 mil down to 22 mil, pretty much right back up to 25 mil again. This general market trend is so powerful that even an item like the Dragon Hunter Crossbow, which arguably even got stronger within the new ranged meta, actually dropped in price still as well, but of course is rising back up again. The Sanguinesti went from 70 mil down to 61 mil, but then has rocketed back up to 70 mil again. Now, another interesting item to look at here is the Twisted Bow. Now, the Twisted Bow is 1 bill 40 mil before the equipment rebalancing changes went through. After the rebalance, it immediately dropped down to 1 bill as a lot of people were selling off in fear, dropped again, and now it's probably going to recover close to where it was before. So to kind of summarize here, yes, in general, the market has been receding for like a year now, but this giant drop off here at the end of the month probably didn't mean that much overall. Alright, so we have established that the most recent dip in prices was most likely caused by new information regarding the equipment rebalance and probably people just kind of selling off their item because they expected the market to drop. However, in the grand scheme of things, the market looks like it's just on a non-stop decline. So when exactly is the bottom? Have we hit rock bottom yet, or will we ever? Now, I know I have touched on this topic quite a few times this year, however, you know, sometimes things do require repeating and reassuring. Now, usually the two main culprits here are the extensive amount of botting and gold farming that is occurring in Oldschool Runescape. That's number one, and number two is the lack of meaningful and new exciting updates for the game. There haven't really been any new items, any new PVM content, and just generally there hasn't been many major changes to the game. When the game is stagnating like this, real players as well as gold farmers and bots will just continue to hammer down the same content over and over and over again. Essentially, that means that a lot of players are continuing to do Zulrah, Raids 1 and 2, the nightmare, and just whatever the best moneymaker is at the time. Now on top of that, no new updates means no new PVM updates, which means the demand for PVM items is just going down. So a high supply and a low demand means the prices are probably just going to continue going down. Now, I think that is probably the largest contributing factor, but another really interesting potential factor, something I've actually never talked about before, could actually be price deflation. Now, I definitely don't peruse the third-party market for RuneScape Gold very often, but I do occasionally look at it whenever I'm doing a market analysis video. For around the last 6 months, the price of OSRS Gold has actually gone up by a substantial amount. Now, generally what a lot of players are worried about is price inflation. If there are a ton of places like Zolcano, Vorkath, and well, the Revs before they were nerfed, just pumping in tons of gold into the game, gold just becomes worthless in relation to other things in the games, like a Dragon Warhammer for example, and that will eventually push up the price as gold becomes worth less. However, if the price of gold on third-party marketplaces is actually going up, that would generally actually indicate that there's less gold in the game now than there was 6 months ago. If actual gold pieces becomes more scarce, then prices will naturally fall. That wouldn't necessarily mean that they are losing value, just that there is less gold to buy them. Now, in my opinion, I think this is less likely of a factor than gold farmers or the lack of meaningful updates, but I thought it was kind of an interesting thing worth mentioning. So how much further will the market crash? Generally, I don't like to make hard and fast predictions, but in my humble opinion, I think the market is probably going to hit the bottom soon, if not already. Jagex has heavily hinted within their blogs that something big is coming up pretty soon. Now I think most likely that is going to be a pretty large PVM update, which I think will reverse the trend at least in the PVM market, which will then spread out to the market as a whole. Even the known updates that are probably going to be coming soon, like combat achievements, is probably going to bump up the market just from that. That in combination with hopefully a more exciting end to 2021, will probably continue to push the market upwards. That would be my prediction anyway, of course, don't take my word for it. Those are just my thoughts on the market at a macro level. Now to finish things off here, I wanted to have a look at a few specific categories of items because not everything is reacting the same way, of course. There are always going to be exceptions. So one thing a lot of people have been talking about is Zulrah. Zulrah items are at an all-time low and just continue to crash further and further every day. This is the first time in recent memory that Zulrah skills have ever been under 100 GP. They're at one of the lowest prices ever, pretty much since their release. Just this month alone, Zulrah skills have crashed from 140 GP each down to around 91 right now or something, 92 and 93. Last April, they're worth around 230 each, now they're worth 91. And of course, because all of these Zulrah items are kind of attached to the price of Zulrah scales, they're getting dragged down as well. The only thing that was keeping them held at a high-ish price was the fact that you could dismantle them into 20,000 Zulrah scales, but because Zulrah scales have dropped so much, so has the Blowpipe and so has the Toxic Trident. The Blowpipe, just as a couple days ago, has finally managed to reach a little bit under 2 mil, which I think may be the cheapest it's ever been. And of course, the price of the Toxic Trident is pretty much the exact same, as the price of course is related. 1.9 mil for a Toxic Trident, 1.9 mil for a Toxic Blowpipe, and 91 GP for Zulrah scales. That is pretty insane. Now, similar to the other items I talked about, around the 20th and 21st, the price decreased fairly rapidly. It's been on a long decline pretty much the entire year, but we got a steeper drop off in just the last couple of days. Unlike the other items though, the Toxic Blowpipe is set to be getting a fairly substantial nerf. Zulrah scales, the Toxic Blowpipe, the Toxic Trident just have a perfect storm of negative things happening to it. Tons of people botting and farming Zulrah. The actual unique items being nerfed is really just tanking the price. Now just based on the new dev blog for the ranged changes, I think the Toxic Blowpipe is still going to be useful. I think once actually the nerf goes through, the price will probably start to go back up again. In the end, Zulrah items may be worth less overall, but I don't think they're ever going to become worthless. It's still going to be a very strong item. So I think these items will go back up with the general market if we ever get less bots or whenever we get some new interesting content. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for the market analysis for the month of April. A lot going on, but I definitely wanted to target this specifically because I've been receiving a lot of questions about it, and it probably is one of the most important topics. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before I go here, I'm going to give a massive thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. A huge thank you to Brian Robinson, Cappy, Colin Corley, Timothy Chen, Guy Fox, Valhalla Lad, Ocelot, and Kush Patel for all being subscribed at the Dragon tier of YouTube membership. And just a big shout out to Ocelot and Kush Patel for 8 months now. Thank you guys so much. Also big thank you to Clack Clack, Need More Pills, Branton Griffin, All Things Gaming, Birdbot, and Base Titch for subscribing. at the Runite tier. You guys are awesome. As always, if you guys are looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is an awesome way to do so. You will get immortalized in all of my future videos, get access to my video release schedule, and of course get a custom role in my Discord server. Thanks again guys, and I'll see you next time.